In the fourth year of our marriage, Lily was involved in a severe car crash. Upon regaining consciousness, she found her memories fixed on a time when she was passionately in love with her first true love, Hero. She outright denied our marriage, insisting that I was the person she despised the most. I exhausted every possible method to help her recall the 4 years we had shared, but nothing seemed to work. Eventually, after another incident, I witnessed her desperately sprinting towards Hero, and my patience finally wore thin. On the day I consented to the divorce, she suddenly remembered me, but by then, I had already resigned myself to leaving. The morning Lily awoke, she was resolute in her decision to end our marriage. As I approached the door with a pot of soup I had prepared overnight, she hurled a cup of water at my feet. "Leave. I don't want to see you." The hot water burned the back of my hand. I forced a smile, masking my hurt, and offered, "I made some soup. Could you please have some?" Lily turned away, refusing to meet my gaze, and repeated her demand for me to leave. After setting down the soup and exiting, I could no longer keep up the facade. Outside the hospital, I crouched by the roadside, biting an unlit cigarette, feeling a surge of bitterness. This marked the fourth year of my pursuit of Lily, using every ounce of my strength just to gain her attention. But even the slightest affection she once had for me had vanished. I had believed marrying Lily was a stroke of luck, especially since she had a lover at the time. I had never interfered in another relationship, silently loving her all along. If Hero hadn't decided to move abroad, I might never have had the chance to pursue Lily. After Hero left the country, I began openly courting Lily. It wasn't until 4 years ago that she agreed to marry me. Our engagement happened during a simple dinner. After the meal, she casually mentioned, "Ethan, let's get our marriage certificate someday." It took me 30 seconds to realize I hadn't misheard. Panicking, I quickly responded, "Wait for me," and ran out, buying only a bouquet of flowers out of fear that if I took longer, Lily might change her mind. My heart raced, and my palms were sweaty from nervousness. That night, I knelt on the ground holding the flowers, my eyes welling up as I looked up at Lily in her beautiful dress, radiant and stunning. Whether in the past or present, she had always been the one I loved. I made a heartfelt vow, word by word. "Lily, will you marry me? I promise to always be good to you." She took my flowers, and my restless heart finally found peace. Later, I proposed again in a dreamy, beautiful setting with gifts, rings, and invited our families and friends to witness it. I realized that Lily's agreement to marry me might not have been out of deep love, but perhaps because she saw my persistence or felt it was time to settle down. Regardless of her feelings, my love for her was sufficient. If Lily hadn't lost her memory in the car accident and reverted to her feelings for Hero, I might have continued this beautiful dream forever. The most painful part wasn't her current hatred or denial of our marriage, but the return of Hero. Lily's first love, Hero, made it impossible for her to hide her feelings from him. After her accident, both our parents gently informed her about our 4-year marriage, presenting the marriage certificate. Lily glanced at it briefly and dismissed it. "So what? If we're married, we can divorce. Besides, I clearly remember loving Hero more." The more they talked, the more agitated Lily became, her recovering body still causing her severe headaches. The doctor advised us to avoid upsetting her to aid her recovery. I stood silently at the door, watching Lily in her hospital bed for a long time before asking both sets of parents to stop mentioning the marriage. I carefully packed the marriage certificate and stored it away, along with all our photos and shared items from the past 4 years. I tried to convince myself that it was okay if she forgot me or even hated me, believing I could pursue her again. However, Hero's return completely threw me off balance. Hero hadn't changed much since high school, maintaining his humble and gentle demeanor with a warm, kind face. I felt a deep bitterness, thinking that while Hero seemed gentle, he wasn't as caring as I was. Why was Lily so fixated on him? The next day at the hospital, I unexpectedly encountered Hero. Lucas, my old friend, had informed me of Hero's return, but I didn't expect him at the hospital. Holding the bone broth I had prepared, I felt lost watching Lily and Hero engrossed in their conversation. Suddenly, Lily laughed softly, her usually pale face now flushed and lively. Their conversation halted when they saw me, filling the room with awkward silence. I held the thermos tighter and smiled, saying gently, "Lily, I made the soup you like. Please have some while it's hot." Before Lily could respond, Hero interjected warmly, "Lily, you're just recovering. You shouldn't eat something so greasy. I brought you some supplements." I was taken aback. This time, Lily's injuries were more severe, so I always prepared bone broth the night before. Even though Lily often told me to leave, I knew she would drink at least a little after I left. But this time, I was uncertain. I set the soup aside and casually mentioned, "I'll go out for a smoke," and made a quick exit, feeling embarrassed. Just before leaving, I heard Hero say, "He's still the same?" And Lily responded with a hint of annoyance, "He's always like that." After that encounter, I stopped visiting the hospital. Instead, I prepared different dishes and had my parents deliver them to Lily. The day before Lily was to be discharged, Lucas invited me for a drink, knowing I had been troubled lately and wanting to show me something interesting. When I arrived, I was surprised to see Hero there as well. Lucas handed me a drink and mocked, "If you're going to act like a fool, at least don't do it this way." Hero, my friend, liked Lily back in school, but he was her boyfriend then. He decided to leave the country, letting go of the relationship, and it took me 2 more years to finally marry her. Now, after an accident, he comes back to take advantage of the situation. Are you even human? Clearly drunk, Lucas was taunting me. I calmly told him to stop drinking and go home. Red-faced, he accused me of being a coward for letting go of my wife. I remained silent until Hero suddenly stood before me, smiling and saying, "So what if Lily broke up with me after I left for abroad? After all these years, doesn't she still love me? And you probably didn't know, did you? She was much happier with me than with you." Before he could finish, I punched him. Fueled by anger and frustration over losing Lily due to one accident, I struck Hero again, leaving him curled on the ground, holding his head. I kicked him once more, shouting, "Don't you dare talk about your past with her. Who do you think you are?" The following day, I discovered that Lucas had intended to help me vent, but Hero had deliberately provoked me. The doctor had scheduled Lily's discharge for the afternoon, but the next morning, just as I was about to leave, I found Hero had already brought Lily back. She stood in front of him, frowning at me. "Ethan, apologize to Hero." I was stunned, unable to respond immediately. Hero gently took Lily's hand, saying, "It's okay, Ethan was just drunk last night." His genuine demeanor made the scene absurd, causing me to laugh until I coughed. After calming down, I sneered, "Hero, you're truly despicable." Hero's expression changed, but he remained silent. "Ethan, Hero is right. You're exactly the same as you were in high school. You haven't changed at all." Lily looked at me with disgust, as if I were nothing more than trash on the roadside. In high school, I was a troublemaker who only knew how to fight and smoke. Now I'm still the same person she couldn't stand. I closed my eyes, replaying her words like a form of self-torture. I finally understood that the Lily who had lost 4 years of memories with me only felt disgust towards me. Just like when she first saw me in high school, she preferred to walk away rather than acknowledge my presence. Back then, even a fleeting glance from her had made me happy for a long time. I lowered my head weakly and spoke in a hoarse voice, clinging to the last shred of my dignity. "Tell him to leave. This is our home, not his." Hero, having achieved his goal, said a few gentle words to Lily before putting down his things and leaving. The next day, Lily handed me the signed divorce papers. "This is the divorce agreement. Look it over, and if there's nothing wrong, sign it." I froze and then turned away. "I won't sign it." Lily frowned, clearly irritated. "Why won't you sign? If it's about money, we'll split everything 50-50. You can even keep this house, and I'll give you an extra $1 million. The house was one I had bought to be our marital home, using most of my savings. I took a deep breath and pushed the divorce papers back to her. I won't sign. Lily looked at me angrily, seemingly unable to understand my refusal. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and shouted, I don't even like you anymore. I love someone else. Won't you sign even though you know that? The living room fell into a heavy silence. I swallowed the pain and retorted hoarsely, You liked me once. You just forgot. Lily froze, then stood up and walked away, leaving behind only one sentence. Suit yourself. Waste your time if you want. I sat alone in the empty living room, suddenly uncertain how much longer I could hold on. After that day, Lily and I fell into a cold war. She wouldn't eat the meals I prepared, and while she slept in the master bedroom, I slept in the guest room. The injuries from the car accident still prevented Lily from standing for long periods. Knowing she wouldn't swallow her pride, I cooked every day and then went to the studio. Only when I returned and saw that she had finished the food would I finally relax. When Lucas found out, he cursed at me over the phone. You're really being a simp, aren't you? I was kneading dough at the time, and his words made me pause for a moment. In the end, I replied bitterly, Lucas, she just doesn't remember. In truth, I had never told anyone about what happened during the 4 years after Lily agreed to marry me. She had never been like this before. During those 4 years, Lily was a wonderful partner. We dated, kissed, and loved each other like any normal couple. On winter nights, when I picked her up from work, she would jump into my arms in her thick coat and slip her hands into mine obediently. On our way home, she would chatter about funny things that happened at work. We'd roll dice to decide who would cook and who would wash the dishes, though I usually ended up doing both. We'd go grocery shopping together, and she'd make me change my avatar to something silly. We'd wear pajamas and curl up on the couch, watching movies and betting on who the killer was. She would get angry, refuse to eat, and change my avatar back, telling me not to change it again. But at work, she transformed back into the calm and poised manager, Emma. During those 4 years, she decisively rejected any suitors who came her way. I had once been loved by her, and letting go now was anything but easy. I wanted to try a little harder. After all, 8 years had passed. So what were 1 or 2 more? I found every excuse to take Lily to the places we had visited during our 4-year marriage. I naively thought that maybe, just maybe, she might remember. But each time, without fail, she would either be called away by a phone call from Hero or spend the entire time chatting with him on her phone. Eventually, Lily stopped going out with me altogether. I tried to talk to her about those 4 years, but she rarely responded. If I talked too much, she would impatiently interrupt and tell me to stop. Seeing her engrossed in her phone, chatting with Hero, I suddenly fell silent. 2 weeks before Lily's birthday, I had booked a venue in advance, decorating the private room beautifully to suit her tastes. On the morning of her birthday, I woke up early to cook her a bowl of longevity noodles. After watching her finish eating, I handed her a small box. Happy birthday, Lily. Recently, Lily and I had slowly returned to a somewhat friendly state. She wasn't as resistant to me anymore, and the argument about the divorce seemed to have been deliberately forgotten by both of us. But deep down, I knew clearly that we could never go back to those 4 years. Lily thanked me and then asked, Can I open it now? I nodded. Inside was a dress. The moment I saw it, I knew Lily would look stunning in it. When she unfolded the dress, a spark of delight flickered in her eyes, and the tightness in my chest loosened instantly. Then I said, I've booked a dinner at your favorite restaurant tonight, if you like. You could wear this. Later, I accompanied Lily to her parents' house for lunch and stayed until the evening. In the evening, we were supposed to head to the restaurant I had reserved. But just as we were about to leave, she received a call and hesitated. I need to go out to see a friend. You go ahead. I'll be there soon. As she reached for her phone, I saw the name on the screen. Hero. I watched her leave without giving me a chance to say anything. Not even a single glance back. I wanted to stop her, to ask if she would really come back after meeting him. But deep down, all I wanted was to hold her back and keep her with me. In the end, I went to the restaurant alone. Lily said she would come. So I waited for her. That night, I waited from 6 p.m. onwards. I sent her texts and called her, but there was no response. Eventually, her phone was turned off. I waited until midnight. Two waiters awkwardly approached me. Mr. Wong, we're sorry, but the restaurant closes at 1 a.m. But I was stunned. The food, which had been reheated half an hour ago, had gone cold again. The cake I had made myself was left in a corner, and the roses had lost their freshness. The waiters exchanged pitying glances, deepening my embarrassment. What hurt the most was the realization that Lily had said she would come. That night, when I went home, Lily didn't return. I sat alone in the living room the entire night. The next day, I saw Lily on Hero's social media. The night before, Hero had taken her to a music festival concert. She was wearing Hero's jacket, her smile carefree and radiant in a way I hadn't seen in a long time, and the warmth and joy in her eyes were almost tangible. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as I put down my phone, Lily walked in. She looked at me on the sofa, her expression momentarily stunned. Then, as if remembering something, she spoke with a hint of panic. "I'm sorry about last night. I forgot." After a sleepless night, I was genuinely exhausted. I tried to force a smile, wanting to say something, anything, whether it was a question or an expression of anger. But I realized I had nothing to say. I felt nothing. Seeing my silence, she hurriedly added, "Last night, Hero mentioned wanting to go to the music festival, so I went with him. Then my phone died, so I couldn't call you. You probably didn't wait long and went back early." "Right." I lowered my gaze and replied softly, "Yes, I understand." The atmosphere was too stifling, so I stood up and said I was going to the studio. As I walked past Lily, she suddenly called out, "Ethan, don't you have anything else you want to ask?" I didn't want to ask anything, so I left at that moment, suddenly remembering a conversation I had with Lucas. "What makes you think she'll ever remember you?" How did I answer back then? I was so confident. I believed in her, but Lily, I think I'm reaching my limit. After that day, both Lily and I became busy. I had my photography studio, and Lily was tied up with year-end tasks at her company. Sometimes, we were so busy that we didn't even have dinner together for 2 or 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Hero posted several photos on social media of him having meals with Lily. I knew he was doing it for me to see. As I looked at those photos, a strange sense of indifference began to creep in. It felt like, for a long time, my life had revolved entirely around Lily. I had told Lucas that I wanted to try my best to help Lily remember me, but somewhere along the way, without realizing it, that effort had loosened. At the end of the month, our high school class president organized a reunion. I hadn't planned to go, but the class president sent me several private messages saying he needed to talk and asked me to attend. So, I cleared my schedule for that night, wondering if Lily would attend. On the night of the reunion, Lily did come, but she was with Hero. When Lily and I got married, we had kept it low-key. Only a few close friends knew, and almost none of our high school classmates were aware. So, seeing them walk in together, everyone assumed Lily and Hero were a couple. One of the drunk male classmates blurted out, "Wow, you two really ended up together after all these years." I watched as Lily opened her mouth to say something, but Hero quickly interjected, "It's been so long. We can't leave without having a drink together, can we?" His vague response painted their relationship in an ambiguous light. I looked at Lily, silently hoping for something, but there was nothing. She just smiled and joined the conversation with others, not even glancing at me, as if I were just another high school classmate to her. The thread in my heart grew lighter and lighter, almost slipping out of my grasp. Halfway through the reunion, the class president sent me a message, asking me to step outside for a chat. By the time I finished my cigarette, Marcus, the class president, finally spoke up. "You liked Lily in high school, didn't you?" This wasn't exactly a secret. It wasn't surprising for anyone to have liked Lily back then. But the one who scared off the troublemakers in the alley behind the school and who left candies on her desk for an entire semester, that was you, wasn't it? I blurted out, "How did you know?" Marcus patted my shoulder. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I saw it and I knew it was you. But when Lily thought it was Hero who did all that, I didn't step forward to tell her the truth." For a moment, It felt like I couldn't hear anything. It was as if I had missed a step on the stairs, and my heart skipped a beat. It took me a while to regain my senses. But before he got together with Hiro, I wrote her a letter telling her everything. How could she think it was Hiro? Marcus frowned, equally puzzled. I don't know about that, but when Hiro celebrated getting together with Lily and took us out to dinner, he claimed he was the one who did all those things. A bad feeling washed over me. Before I could fully process what Marcus had said, the smell of smoke filled the air, and the sudden blare of alarms sent everyone rushing out of the restaurant. There was a fire. I froze for a moment, then instinctively ran back inside. Lily is still in there, I thought, not wanting to disturb anyone with our noise. The waiter had seated our group in a private room on the far corner of the second floor. By the time I ran in, the first floor of the restaurant was in chaos. People were scrambling to get out, frantic and desperate. The flames were growing, and when I reached the second floor, I realized they hadn't noticed the fire outside. A few people were too drunk to stand, and after I yelled that there was a fire and we needed to get out, those who were still sober began waking the others and dragging them out. I scanned the room and saw Lily. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the exit. We didn't exchange a word. She held onto my hand tightly and followed me. As we passed the restroom, she suddenly hesitated and said, "Hiro just went to the bathroom." I stopped in my tracks, seeing the panic in her eyes but saying nothing. Feeling her tug toward the restroom, I tightened my grip on her hand and led her outside. "There's no time. We need to get out." But she tried to protest. I firmly pulled her out with me. Once outside, the firefighters had arrived and the flames were gradually being brought under control. It was only then that I noticed a large scrape on my arm, though I hadn't felt it before. A sharp pain shot through me. As soon as we were outside, Lily began searching the crowd, thinking about what Marcus had said. I was desperate for answers, ignoring the fact that we had just escaped a life-threatening situation. I asked urgently, "Lily, do you know who left those candies on your desk for an entire semester? Who chased away those troublemakers?" "Hiro." The rest of my words got stuck in my throat. I watched as Lily ran toward Hiro, who was standing in the distance. Her eyes were red as she sighed in relief. "You're okay, thank goodness." The sight of them embracing so tightly stung my eyes. The fragile thread holding on in my heart finally snapped. The scene was all too familiar. I remembered a day in high school when Hiro got into a fight, and I was passing by while working a part-time job. By coincidence, I knew the guys Hiro was fighting with. When Lily arrived and saw me, she immediately assumed I had sent those guys to cause trouble for Hiro. She looked at me with anger. "Ethan, I regret ever helping you. You bullied your classmates, always causing trouble. Don't you know how to show respect? I can't believe I once thought you could change." The disgust in her eyes was so clear that I couldn't find the words to respond. I wanted to say it wasn't true. I wasn't causing trouble. I hadn't started that fight, and I hadn't sent anyone to bully Hiro. I wanted to say that I wasn't as bad as she thought. That day, my boss had praised me for being diligent, and I was saving every penny I earned from my part-time job. I wasn't disrespectful at all, but it was as if I'd lost my voice. My throat was dry, and I couldn't say a word. I looked at Hiro, hoping he would explain that it had nothing to do with me, but Hiro just glanced at me and said nothing. All I could do was watch as Lily supported Hiro and walked away, step by step. Initially, I hadn't planned on writing a letter to explain that I was the one who had done all those things, but I didn't want Lily to think I was like that. I didn't want her to feel that being liked by someone like me was unbearable. I agonized over it for a week, writing dozens of drafts before finally managing to write a letter that didn't feel too forced. In it, I explained that, yes, I had a temper at first, but I'd never bullied anyone. I confessed that I had liked Lily for a long time. I wrote that it was me who had chased off those troublemakers after night study and ran away because I was afraid she would misunderstand. I also wrote that I was the one who left those different candies on her desk every day for an entire semester when she was feeling down. There was so much more I wanted to write, but what did I want to say the most? I wanted to say, Lily, I like you so much. I'm not that bad. Really, won't you give me a chance? But that night, Marcus told me that Lily never knew it was me. My letter was probably lost in some corner, trampled on and covered in dirt. My love and courage over all these years had never been known. But when I saw Lily running toward Hero in that life or death moment, so resolute, whether she knew or not didn't seem to matter anymore. I didn't care anymore. I thought it was time to let go. My love for her was never known, and in her memory, I remained the same person she'd always seen me as, unremarkable and unchanged. Whether Lily knew or not didn't matter anymore. I decided I couldn't continue with her anymore. That day, I watched the two of them from afar and then turned to leave. I went to the hospital to get my arm bandaged, and by the time I got home, it was almost 1 a.m. When I returned, the lights were on, and Lily's eyes lit up when she saw me. "You're back." I didn't say anything, just went to the bathroom to wash my face and clear my head. She followed me step by step, talking as she went. "I couldn't find you earlier. I looked everywhere. I tried calling, but you didn't answer. You must be tired tonight. I brought some food back for you. Come and eat. What happened to your hand? Did you just get hurt? Did you go to the hospital yourself? Why didn't you tell me? I would have gone with you." I interrupted her. "Lily, I agreed to the divorce. I thought that with the way I felt about Lily, I would never say those words in my life. But I had overestimated myself. Lily, this is the end for us. Let's put a period on these 10 years of my youth." After saying those words, I turned and left. "It's too late tonight. I'll pack my things and leave tomorrow." Lily reached out to stop me. "Why did you suddenly change your mind and decide to divorce?" My head felt like it was going to explode. I didn't want to say a word. I gently pulled away from her grip. "You can have the lawyer draft a new agreement. I don't want your money. You can do whatever you want with the assets." I was utterly exhausted. My body felt like a rusted machine, too difficult to move. Behind me, I heard Lily's trembling voice. "Ethan, are you sure? You're the one who asked for the divorce. There's no going back." I didn't stop walking. Yes, I won't regret it. Lying in bed, I thought, I really need to take a break. That night, I had many dreams of my childhood, of Lily in high school, and of the Lily I married during those 4 years. But one thing remained the same: the disdain in her eyes when she looked at me. When I woke up, it was almost 11 a.m. I took my time getting up and started packing. I didn't have much to pack, so it didn't take long. When I went downstairs, I thought that given how eager Lily was to get divorced, I'd have the papers by this morning. But instead, there was breakfast on the table. I was stunned. Lily was sitting on the sofa, acting like nothing had happened. "I made breakfast. You should try some." Not long ago, I would have been overjoyed at this. But now I felt no happiness at all. I only felt a deep sense of resignation. In the end, I shook my head and declined. "No, I'm not hungry. Later, when you have time, send me a message so we can finalize the divorce." "Hero, I don't think he's someone you should trust with your future. You might want to reconsider." On the night of the restaurant fire, if Hero had really been in the restroom, I wouldn't have ignored someone's life. But in my hurried run back into the restaurant, I saw Hero rushing out of the restroom. After saying that, I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. I heard the sound of something shattering behind me, and Lily shouted, "Ethan, if you walk out that door, don't ever come back." It was still the house I had lived in for 4 years, and as I stepped out, a sharp pain stabbed through my heart. I told myself, "Ethan, it's really over this time." I went back to my studio, planning to finish the photo shoots I had scheduled with a few clients over the next few days. While I was busy with work, I kept waiting for a message from Lily, but she never sent anything. Until one night, I finally received a message from her. "Ethan, there is a burglar at the house. I'm scared." Without much hesitation, I dropped the camera and rushed to Lily's place. I arrived as quickly as I could. When I got there, the living room was a mess, with blankets and pillows scattered all over the floor. The security guards and police were at the door. Lily was sitting on the floor. I steadied my breathing and looked her over from head to toe. Seeing no signs of injury, I felt slightly relieved. I asked softly, "Can you stand?" Lily shook her head and reached out to wrap her arms tightly around my neck. With no other choice, I lifted her and carried her to the sofa. After we finished explaining the situation to the police, I turned on the TV for her to watch while I started cleaning up the living room. As I cleaned, I gave her instructions. "You should stay at your parents' place for now. Don't come back until the burglar is caught. When you do come back, remember to take the keys out of the door. If you hear anything, stay in your room and don't come out. Call the police. If you're ever in danger, call the police immediately. I can't always be there to answer your call." As I spoke, I suddenly stopped. I realized that Lily might not want to hear me say these things. "Ethan, my stomach hurts." Instinctively, I asked, "You haven't eaten dinner yet, have you?" She nodded, and I sighed as I headed to the kitchen. I started cooking noodles and then suddenly realized what I was doing. A pair of hands wrapped around my waist, and I froze. My first instinct was to push her away, but Lily's voice came out in a sob. "Ethan, I regret it. Can we not get divorced, please?" I didn't say anything. I just quietly finished cooking the noodles and brought them to the table for her to eat. After she finished, I finally spoke. "Lily, you need to eat properly, even when you're alone. One person may have lost their memory, but it seems the habits ingrained in their soul couldn't be changed. You had gotten used to having me around. She was accustomed to someone making her dinner while gently scolding her when she was hungry or reminding her to put on more clothes when she was cold. When that person suddenly disappeared, she might feel lost. But in the end, I think this is just a false memory." When my friend Lucas found out that I was getting a divorce from Lily, he was silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed and asked, "Are you sure?" I stared blankly at my drink and just nodded in response. "I'm planning to close the studio for a while next year and go traveling for a bit." There was just one thing left to do. Lily hadn't given me the divorce papers yet. Reluctantly, I had to send her a message asking when she would be available. But Lily kept putting it off. She'd either say she had work or needed to have dinner with her parents. After a few attempts, I understood what she was doing. I got so busy with the year-end rush of clients that I ended up forgetting about the divorce. Before I knew it, the new year had arrived. During this time, our parents started noticing that something was wrong between us. We usually celebrated the holidays together, but this year didn't feel right. So I explained the situation to my parents in advance. Then, on the day before New Year's Eve, I got a call from Lily. "Ethan, can you come home for dinner tonight?" She quickly added, as if afraid I might refuse. "My parents want to see you." Since she had even involved her parents, I had no choice but to agree. That evening, I picked up some gifts and then went to Lily's office to pick her up for dinner at her parents' house. The dinner went well enough, and we didn't mention anything about the divorce in front of her parents. After dinner, I helped Lily clean up the dishes before telling her I was leaving. Lily put on her coat to walk me out. We didn't say anything until we reached the parking lot. Then she finally spoke. "When I first woke up, I wanted to divorce you. I tried to ignore the pain in my heart and responded lightly. Yeah, you wouldn't even drink the soup I made and told me to get out." Lily smiled a little, but then her smile faded and she fell silent for a moment before continuing. "After I woke up, I kept thinking I loved Hero, but when I was with him, I wasn't as happy as I thought I'd be. After that night when you wanted to divorce me, I felt strange and it hurt. Ethan, I don't even remember loving you, so why does it hurt so much?" She held on to me. "Ethan, can we not get divorced? Can we start over?" My heart felt heavy. Finally, I took a red envelope from my bag and placed it in her hand. "Lily, Happy New Year, but we can't go back. Not all mistakes can be undone, and I'm not willing to keep putting myself through this over and over again." After the new year, I found myself with more free time. Lily, on the other hand, started messaging me more frequently after that night. Sometimes she would come to the studio to find me. Other times, she would use some excuse to call me over. This continued until last week. However, this week, the messages from Lily suddenly stopped. I only received one message from her. She asked to meet at a cafe this week. When I arrived, Lily was wearing a dark coat, a scarf, and her hair draped over her shoulders. When she saw me, she smiled. "Ethan, you're here." That's when I realized something was off. I hesitated. "You've regained your memory, haven't you?" Lily silently nodded. After learning that Lily had regained her memory, we both fell into silence. She looked at me and said, "I'm sorry for everything that happened after I lost my memory." I sighed, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. What if Lily had regained her memory sooner? Or what if I had held on just a little longer? But there were no what-ifs. I had reached my limit. Lily remained silent for a while before she spoke again. Hero returned to the country because he lost money trying to start a business abroad. After hearing about my situation, he rushed back hoping I would give him money. Hearing this, I felt a sense of relief. Since Lily had already found out, she wouldn't be with Hero anymore. Knowing Lily, she wouldn't let Hero get away with it either. After discussing what needed to be discussed, we inevitably brought up the topic of divorce. Looking at the woman I had loved for nearly 10 years, I felt nothing but regret and bitterness. "About the divorce, I'm really sorry. Are you sure you want to go through with it?" I nodded. After signing the agreement, we scheduled to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau the following Monday. But just before I left, Lily spoke softly. "I didn't know it was you who chased away those troublemakers and left candies on my desk for an entire semester. I always thought it was Hero." Her voice trembled. "Ethan, I'm sorry. It seemed that no one was really at fault. It was just bad luck on my part." I later found out that Hero had thrown away the letter I had written. When I learned this, I stayed silent for a long time, saying nothing. That night, as I was going to bed, I could only think, my luck was really terrible back then. After the divorce was finalized, I followed through with my plan to close the studio and stopped accepting photography jobs. I began planning my travel itinerary for the year. Then I heard from Lucas about Hero's situation. Apparently, Hero was being hounded by creditors and had no money to repay them. Desperate, he had resorted to asking old classmates for loans, one by one. But everyone knew what kind of person he was now, so no one was willing to lend him anything. Some even took the opportunity to kick him while he was down. His reputation was completely ruined. He had always cared about his reputation the most, and now it was utterly destroyed. When Lucas told me this, he was practically gloating, saying, "Serves him right for taking advantage of others. Karma's finally caught up with him." I smiled and hung up the phone, then went back to planning my trip. I ended up traveling for a whole year, seeing many sights I'd never had the chance to see before. During that year, I still thought about Lily sometimes and often felt a sense of melancholy and regret about our relationship. I couldn't blame her, but it seemed I couldn't quite forgive either. So I decided to leave it to time. We could be strangers, classmates, friends, maybe even enemies, but it seemed we could no longer be lovers. Perhaps one day, when I've truly let go, I'll sit down with Lily again, have a drink, and chat about the old days. I'll talk about all the foolish things I did when I loved her for those years, and maybe I'll tell her about the year I finally let her go.